welcome to Senior Speak New Hampshire on your Concord TV, sponsored by AARP. I am Karen Ulmer-Dorsch, the producer-host of this program, and I welcome you today and also wish you all a wonderful 2023. Hope that the holidays were good to you. Some of you may recall that back in September, because that's the month for Alzheimer's awareness, I had intended a discussion on that topic that covered the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. Since 5.7 million people, mainly 50 years and older, have this disease in the U.S. today. And the projected number by 2050 is 16 million. That's pretty powerful. However, at the last minute, Melissa Grenier, the regional manager of New Hampshire's Alzheimer's Association, couldn't join us. But today she is here with us, and I am eager for you to meet her. Melissa has been with the Alzheimer's Association for 11 years, and currently her role includes overseeing operations in the regional office at Bedford and providing the association's wide range of programs, services, and training across New Hampshire. For 18 years, Melissa has worked in the area of elder guardianship, home care, geriatric practice, psychiatric care, and long-term care. And we're most fortunate to have her with us today. So Melissa, thank you for taking the time to help us understand how to identify the early signs of Alzheimer's and how we can better be informed about this disease.
Well, thank you for having me, Karen. It's so nice to finally be here with you.
It's delightful to have you.
So I'm happy to talk about the warning signs of Alzheimer's disease, and frankly, I think it's incredibly important for adults of any age to be aware of this, because many of us have parents or grandparents
Yes.
or spouses, and Alzheimer's disease can impact people under the age of 65.
Yes.
So the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease can show up, not very frequently, but can show up in 40 and 50,
Right.
Someone in their 40s or 50s.
Right. So it's important that we know how to, and also talk to us a little bit about the difference between Alzheimer and dementia.
Sure, that's a frequently asked question at the Alzheimer's Association, so I'm sure plenty of your viewers will be wondering about that as well. So dementia in of itself is not a complete diagnosis unto itself. It's actually what we call an umbrella term to describe other medical conditions that actually cause dementia. So think of the word dementia as a fever. If you go to the emergency room and the doctor says, you have a fever, well, it's not a complete diagnosis, it's a symptom. So if we think about dementia in a similar way, dementia is a loss of cognitive functioning significant enough to impact a person's day-to-day functioning. So it's really that second part of that definition that's important, impacts day-to-day functioning. Because as we all know, we could be tired, we could be stressed, we could be ill,
Yep.
and we feel like we're not functioning properly, but that's a temporary situation. So it may be impacting our day-to-day functioning for a few days or a couple weeks until we feel better, but it's not an ongoing process. Dementia is not a normal part of aging and is a condition that is prolonged. So that's what dementia is. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. It accounts for over 60 to 80% of all dementias that get diagnosed are specifically Alzheimer's. So, when we see how very common Alzheimer's disease is, it makes a little bit more sense as to why many people inadvertently use the terms interchangeably.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So go right into your little information or the spiel for us. So give us the 10.
Absolutely. You've heard this before, but your viewers maybe haven't. So I think one of the first things that I want to say is that I'm going to give you 10 of, the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease. Except for the first one, They don't always come in the order I'm going to be listing them.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So, and you do not have to have all of these warning signs in order to be concerned or to talk to your doctor.
Okay.
Okay. So the first symptom with Alzheimer's disease that people normally see or experience is short-term memory loss.
Uh-huh.
So short-term, an example of a short-term memory would be if I asked you what you had for breakfast this morning, right? So if you had oatmeal for breakfast, that's a short-term memory. A long-term memory, on the other hand, is maybe what street you grew up on or what your first dog's, your family
Right.
pet's name was,
Uh-huh.
right? So short-term memories seem to be impacted very early on with Alzheimer's disease. So that's what we typically see first with Alzheimer's. With other forms of dementia, other symptoms show up first. But we're going to focus on Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
So short-term memory loss. So that is typically what we see first. And the rest of the symptoms I'm going to talk about aren't necessarily in this chronological order.
Okay. Okay.
So another warning sign that we see very often has to do with challenges in planning and solving problems. So that could look like a lot of different things. That could look like completing an email at work or in your personal life. That could look like not being able to follow a recipe.
Uh-huh.
A recipe is a plan with an end result that you're hoping to get. So changes in planning and solving problems is very common and can really start to impact a person's employment or if they volunteer with other organizations or just sort of managing their day-to-day life. So that's the second of the 10 that we're going to talk about. So the next one that I want to talk about has to do with having a hard time completing familiar tasks. So Karen, what's a familiar task that you do in your home?
Prepare dinner.
Preparing dinner, that's perfect. So if I were working with a family and they said their loved one was used to cooking and baking all the time and now they're burning things, being unsafe, maybe they started a small kitchen fire. So not only completing that task, not being able to finish dinner, but doing it in an unsafe manner or in a concerning way. So that is one that we see very often. And that could also look like managing a budget. I mean, a budget is something everyone has to manage for their own independence. So that can be another example of a familiar task. Any questions about that?
No, not yet. I want to go back to short-term memory.
Sure.
Because sometimes I have difficulty remembering yesterday and today, what I did, and so on and so forth. Because they kind of run, when you're retired, they kind of run in together. Should I be concerned?
No.
Yeah.
That would be like, I was just thinking when you were talking about retirement, I was thinking of when I'm on vacation. I don't know if it's Wednesday or Thursday or whatever, right? So no, I don't think, losing track of that, what day exactly it is necessarily super concerning. If you notice that you were forgetting things that were more significant in your life, like your doctor's appointments, taking your medication, how to drive your car, things like that, I would be a lot more concerned about that.
I can rest easy.
And then hopefully for you and your viewers, some of these will make you feel better. We'll say, oh, I'm okay, I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And then some of your viewers may say, you know what? I do have that issue, a couple of these issues, and maybe the next time I go in to talk to my doctor, I should talk about that.
Okay. All right.
So good question. So another symptom that we see is confusion with time or place. So people with Alzheimer's disease can misunderstand the passing of time. So I'll give you an example. I used to bring a woman named Jeanette to her doctor's appointments, and there was one specialist that I had to take her to, and they were running extremely late. And she was having a horrible time waiting in the waiting area. And so it took about an hour and a half for her special eye doctor to get to her appointment. Well, the next day I went to visit her, and I said, boy, that was a long wait we had yesterday, trying to make small talk. And she said, oh, that thing? Oh, we were out in a jiffy. Now, she was none too happy the day before. We had to go for walks, and I had to redirect her to some magazines and, get her a glass of water and all these different things, just to keep her engaged for an hour and a half while we waited for the doctor. But in her mind, she didn't remember that it took so long. And in her mind, I'd much rather her remember that it went by quickly than that she was quite miserable for an hour and a half waiting for the doctor.
Right.
But who isn't miserable waiting for that long for a doctor?
Right.
So people can sometimes misunderstand where they are or how they got there. I used to be a pharmacy technician in college, and I had someone who came up to the counter and said, "Oh, I'm here to pick up my prescription." And 30 minutes later, he came back to pick up the same prescription. I said, "Mr. Jones, you already picked up your prescription."
Whoa.
"No, I haven't. I haven't been here today." And I said, "Yeah, I don't have anything to give you because you already paid and you already took it with you." And luckily, I knew his wife, and I called his wife, and his wife said, "I'm so glad you called because he was supposed to be home 2 hours ago, and I didn't know where he was."
Wow.
So in that case, he didn't realize that he had already been there, and we could use that as an example almost of wandering or getting lost because he ended up someplace and just didn't get home.
Yeah.
So anyway, confusion with time or place, and that's why folks may remember that their doctors ask them, "Do you know what day of the week it is?" or "Do you know what month it is? Do you know who the president is?" They're trying to gain a person's orientation to time and place. So another symptom that we see actually has to do with vision, which a lot of people don't anticipate that vision would be impacted by Alzheimer's disease. So vision and spatial awareness. And spatial awareness is proximity, how close or how far things are from you. So if there's a family that we're working with at the Alzheimer's Association and they say, "Boy, Mom's starting to have some issues with her vision," then I will start talking about safety because obviously someone who is having visual problems probably shouldn't be driving, or shouldn't be driving at night, or it depends on their issue. And I also worry about home safety because if someone's having issues with their vision and spatial awareness, then they might be at a higher risk for falling down the stairs or tripping on things. So it's really important for people to understand that this is not just a memory. It doesn't just impact memory. That's why it's so great that you have me here to go over some of these maybe lesser known symptoms that people should be aware of. So yeah, sometimes people will go in and see their eye doctor and say, "Look, I'm having these changes in my vision," or "My husband is having these changes in his vision." And the doctor looks at the eye and says, "There's no change in his vision." So in that case, they may recommend that they see a neurological specialist because if the person is interpreting that they're having visual problems, but there's nothing biologically wrong with the eye, then there might be something else going on. So it's very interesting. So any questions about those?
No.
This is good.
You're doing
we're
well.
cranking through these. So one of the biggest or most impactful, I guess you could say, warning sign has to do with communication. So if you're caring for someone who has dementia or Alzheimer's disease, any of your viewers, I'm sure that you're aware that verbal communication becomes more and more difficult. So a person with Alzheimer's disease, their vocabulary can shrink. Their understanding of how to participate in a conversation changes. So they have a harder time making their needs known, and they also have a harder time interpreting what other people are saying or telling them.
Wow.
So that's a really tough road to travel, I guess, if you're a person with memory loss, because you have things to say, but maybe you can't just actually get them out correctly or in a way that someone else is going to understand. So having a lot of patience when you're caring for someone with memory loss is really important, and learning some new strategies for communication, which is something that the Alzheimer's Association provides in terms of another type of education program.
Yeah.
And a lot of times improving communication will actually reduce a lot of that frustration that leads to dementia-related behaviors that people, family members and caregivers often get frustrated with. So we can eliminate or prevent a lot of those by just learning how to communicate with our loved ones better.
Right. Yeah, that has to be really difficult, I think.
And I think as caregivers too, there's a lot of responsibility on the caregiver to learn these approaches. The person with memory loss, unfortunately, at a certain point in the disease process, can't change their communication style, for instance.
Exactly.
Right? So the caregiver, a lot of the responsibility falls on the caregiver to create strategies to
Right.
be able to communicate with them.
Right.
Yeah. So many props to all the caregivers out there in New Hampshire
Right.
who are caring for someone with memory loss.
And if a caregiver finds that they are in this situation, the situation has become difficult, can they contact Alzheimer's and get some help there? Or
Absolutely. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because we do have an office in Bedford, which you referenced earlier when you were introducing me. So we do have a physical space in Bedford. People are welcome to come visit us. We do have some people that will come visit us and want some information or consultation. But everything that we offer in the community and to family members is completely free. And people can call our toll-free 1-800 number, which will be or is being scrolled across the screen right now. And that number is literally available nights, weekends, and holidays at no cost to callers.
Great.
And they can get something as simple as a support group list or a list of home care agencies, or they can say, I'm really having to make a tough decision about placing mom in assisted living or having help at home, and I'm really stuck on what to do. I feel really guilty. So we can help a person or a family really process whatever the concern is for them and their family, because everybody who is impacted by Alzheimer's travels a very different road.
Right.
People with Alzheimer's have different symptoms than someone sitting next to them that
Right.
also has Alzheimer's. So we want to make sure that we are sort of customizing and
Right.
individualizing the information and the care plans to reflect exactly what's going on with that person or family.
Okay. Okay.
All
So-
right, we've got a few more. So
Yeah.
another symptom has to do with losing things or misplacing them. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had to come up with some creative strategies because I'm constantly losing my keys. So I actually have a little hook that I hook onto the strap of my purse. So literally, it always stays there. So we can come up with strategies for a lot of these symptoms, but misplacing and losing things, it is annoying, frankly, to lose your glasses or the remote control or our keys or our cell phones, right?
Amen.
A lot of times we can retrace our steps and find
Yeah.
them. So for someone with Alzheimer's disease, a lot of times they're losing their purse or their wallet.
Yeah.
They're losing important documents. They're losing or misplacing, their bills. They're losing track
Right.
of bills. They're either throwing them away or hiding them in places.
Yeah.
And I think this applies to this time of year around the holiday season. Sometimes you store away a Christmas gift in your special
Right.
spot, and you say, "Oh, I'm going to remember where that is later." And I've been known to do that, and then I forget where it is
Right.
come Christmas time, come
Right.
Christmas morning. So I think that some of that applies when we're talking about someone with memory impairment, because they have the best intentions, right? Or there's a reason they feel protective over, their wallet or their purse,
Right.
and they want to keep it safe. But the problem is that a lot of times they're misplacing really important things that can make it difficult for them to get what they
Exactly.
need, like insurance cards or
Right.
their wallet or things like that.
Yeah.
So that's another common warning sign of Alzheimer's disease. So, but I don't want to scare your viewers if you lose your cell phone or your keys or who knows, your glasses, it doesn't automatically mean that you're coming down with Alzheimer's. It just means keep an eye on it. And if it happens all the time and it starts to impact your day-to-day life, and maybe there's some other
Right.
things going on, then that might warrant you mentioning it to your doctor the next time you go in. But yeah, there's some funny things that I've had gone missing with in working with clients in the past. So another really important warning sign that I want to talk about has to do with decreased or poor judgment. So I know the AARP is really focused right now on financial abuse and exploitation probably
Yeah.
nationwide, but I know more specifically
Right.
in New Hampshire.
Right.
We're an aging state. And so when we talk about decreased or poor judgment, that can look like a lot of different things. That could look like not wearing weather appropriate clothing outside.
Right.
Going to check, if there's a winter storm outside and you see your neighbor walking outside with slippers and a house coat on
Right.
to check their mail, that's
Right.
that's not something the average person would do. That would
Exactly.
be very concerning. The person themselves probably doesn't find it concerning. They just have a mission. They're going to go
Right.
check the mail, and I'm gonna get there. It could be giving out personal information, financial information. We see that quite a lot. There are so many scams and so much fraud out there, and I think people with memory impairment are exceptionally vulnerable.
Of course they
to,
are.
I mean, we all are nowadays,
Right,
With
but-
hackers and scammers and fraud and all that. But I think people, older adults especially, but more specifically, people with memory impairment,
Right.
they're just incredibly vulnerable and make easy targets. And so we want to make your viewers aware that decreased or poor judgment is a common warning
Yeah.
sign of Alzheimer's disease, and should be observed and sort of monitored very, very closely.
Exactly.
It's very easy for someone to make really quick but poor decisions, right?
Exactly.
That could really impact them
Right.
for the rest of their life. And
Yep.
when it comes to financial abuse and exploitation, the likelihood of someone getting that money back is incredibly low,
Next to
almost
nil.
next
Yeah.
to nil.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we really want to be on the preventative side,
That's
which I know
right.
AARP is
Right.
very
We
much
are
involved with.
very much.
So another warning sign has to do with withdrawal. So withdrawal from activities that someone used to love to do, or family gatherings.
Yep.
If I'll give you an example, I was working with someone and he was obsessed with the Red Sox. So when he started not being able to remember when the games were, or his favorite players, who they were, what their numbers were, or the rules of the game,
Yeah.
that was a huge red flag for his
Sure.
family. And I think that's another thing to point out, is that what's a red flag for you or your family may be very different than what's a red flag for
Exactly.
my
Yeah,
family.
right.
And this is just a conversation to remind people to pay attention.
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
you see that there's something wrong, say something. Your doctors are there to support you and provide you with health care, support. And so if something's going on, it really is important to talk to someone's medical provider.
Right.
Incredibly
Okay.
important. So we're at number 10. We're at the
All
last
right,
one.
that's good.
So the last of the 10 warning signs has to do with changes in mood and personality, which again, I don't think everyone realizes that mood and personality can change with Alzheimer's disease. So when we say a person's mood or personality changes, what does that mean? So if I'm normally a happy, bubbly person, right, and not all of a sudden, but as my Alzheimer's progresses, I become very anxious and paranoid. That's not like me. That's a change in my
Right.
in my mood. And when we're talking about personality changes, I'll give you a couple examples. I've worked with people who were retired school teachers and were very active in their community, and as their disease progressed, they started swearing like truck drivers, right?
Whoa.
And they were very aggressive and resistant, right? So that was a big change for them in terms of their overall personality as well. But on the flip side, I've also worked with folks that were, let's just say politely, rough around the edges, right? Kind of gruff, kind of direct, and they became big old pussycats at the
Yeah, isn't
as
that
they're
fascinating?
It's really, really interesting. And so I think when someone is experiencing a change in mood or personality, that could certainly be caused from something else. It could be depression, could be several other things going
Yeah.
on. But I think especially when it's in conjunction with maybe one or more of these other symptoms, that should be an extra red flag for your
Right.
viewers.
Right. Yeah. And that, I think that's one of the most difficult things to deal with, because I recall a friend of mine whose husband was just a marvelous man, and then all of a sudden he just became violent. And also, if they would if they would be in the store going shopping or something, all of a sudden everybody in the store would hear this gentleman, and it just has to be so difficult for the caregiver to experience this, because of course the person that is doing it
Doesn't realize it.
doesn't realize it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there are strategies. I mean, I think so. That is going to the grocery store is a prime example of when someone can call the Alzheimer's Association. You know, no matter what their difficulty is, whether it's trying to find new strategies to go grocery shopping
Right.
or get to the doctor or whatever it is, they can call us and we can problem solve and we can troubleshoot and give them real examples of how to sort of
Right.
navigate that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have a sister who has dementia. I would not say that she is in any of the stages that we're talking about yet, but we never know, you know. And fortunately, she recognized, she was a nurse, and she recognized that she could not live alone any longer, you know, and so she was very willing to go into an assisted living. But it can be an extremely difficult thing for families to endure. So, people, I hope that if you know someone who would be in need of Melissa or the association's care, please have them call. And next time, be good, do good, be one. But Melissa, thank you so much for
Nice
being
to
my
see you,
guest
Karen.
today.